Welcome to this episode of TAC Tic Talk. I'm Dr. Joe Bush, editorial director of the American Chiropractor magazine, joined by publisher Jacqueline Toussard. Today, we have caught up with Tom Daniel, general manager of Online Chiropractic. They provide powerful websites, reputation management, search engine solutions, paid advertising, social media, patient education, all the services you need to affordably grow your practice. Welcome to the show, Mr. Daniel.
Nice to be here, Joe.
So if you want to learn more about Online Chiro, just to jump in here before everyone gets started, call 888-932-5560. I am a chiropractor, Tom, and I've used Online Chiro for a long time, and I really enjoyed the product that you guys put out. But I don't think a lot of people realize just how robust what you guys do is. Can you just talk a little bit about Online Chiro and what they can provide the practicing chiropractor in the field?
Well, and Dr. Joe, Tom, before I wanna cut you off because I wanted to say the number one thing I thought was missing in your intro for online chiropractic, I understand is you're building chiropractic clinics, getting more patients in there and keeping them. Is that kind of your number one tagline?
Well, a lot of people ask me, what do you do for a living? And, the short answer to that question is I could say we build websites for chiropractic practices. But that's not true. It's not an accurate statement. What we build is something called a web presence ecosystem. So in nature, an ecosystem is the bug, soil, light, dirt, bacteria, all that stuff working together to make it work, right? Well, what we do is we start off with the website, but that is just the tip of the iceberg, right? The website is just one component of your ecosystem. So you build a great looking website, you can have the best looking website in the world, but if you rank on the 13th page of a Google search for chiropractor near me, you might as well not even have a website, even though it's the best looking site that's ever been created. So the next portion of the ecosystem that we do is called search engine optimization, right? That's taking the website and making sure that it is both technically correct, right? So that Google's computers can read it, but then also the content that's on the website. So to making sure that you have content and keywords, and those keywords are tied back to the services that you actually offer. So the second part of the ecosystem, this Google search engine optimization, is incredibly important because you need to be found. You need to show up on that first page, preferably in the top 3 or 4, in order to get clicks. And when you get clicks, then they come to your website, they see your website, and hopefully they judge you within, and this happens, unfortunately, they judge you and your practice in about the first 30 seconds of hitting your website. So you need to have a great looking homepage, a great looking presence to keep them there, and content as well, in order for them to click that button in the upper right hand corner that says schedule an appointment, or that phone number in the upper right hand corner where they dial it. And so that's the second component. The world, though, over the last 6 to 9 months has changed. It's changed dramatically. And what's happened is this thing called AI search, right? Artificial intelligence search, Chat GPT. You guys have all heard of it, right? So a lot of people have used it, where they go online and instead of asking Google for a chiropractor near me, they go to Chat GPT and they say, I'm looking for a chiropractor that does this kind of adjustment, takes this kind of insurance, is within 5 miles of my home, and has office hours on a Saturday. Enter. And it gives you a different list than what happens in a Google search. And it seems crazy that just in 6 months that 20-25% and growing percentage of all the searches that are happening have moved over onto the AI platform. So you can rank number one in a Google search, but you're missing out now on 25, maybe even up to 30% now of all searches where people are looking for a chiropractor because they're using these AI search engines to do that.
Tom, I'm happy you mentioned that because I did that recently. I went in there and I was like, who's the best chiropractor in my area, right? In Panama, for example. And I was on there, fortunately, but then it started counterselling me. Like it started being like, but don't you want to try a physical therapist? I was like, wait, I do physical therapy too. But then I was like, doesn't Dr. Bush do physical therapy too? Well, but not every, so it's kind of a nuanced thing. Clearly, you're studying this. I'm just kind of messing around. Is that something that you can influence with the website?
We've actually launched a product now, and it's called AIO, and it's for artificial intelligence optimization. What we learned, we actually studied this for about 3 months, and we took a couple of random accounts that weren't ranking at all in a Google in an AI search, and we started playing around with their websites, and we came up with this weird combination of things that you can do, and it's like a secret. I'll call it a secret sauce, right? And it's as crazy as mixing peanut butter with anchovies and coming up with the new secret sauce for a hamburger, right? And it
Mhm.
was this weird combination of things that we discovered that we can do to a website in order to make it show up in a chat GBT, Gemini, Grok search. And we tested it, and son of a gun, if it didn't work. What's amazing about AIO versus Google searches is because every AI search happens in pretty much real time. It's not a Google database that builds up information. It in real time goes out and looks at the world, makes a determination, and comes back with an answer and then delivers that answer
Mhm.
to the person who asked the question. And that's why they have to have such massive computer systems because it's not a database that it's searching. It literally is crawling the web in real time. And so this combination, the secret sauce of the peanut butter anchovies we came up with, we discovered that within 2 weeks, we could move people from not showing up at all to being in the top 3 or 4 or 5 in these AI search and these AI search results. And that was incredibly eye opening for us. And from there, we actually developed a product, we productized it, and we've actually now launched it. And we've got now hundreds and hundreds of
Mhm.
clients that are now utilizing this service in addition to the Google search optimization. So we've got now SEO and AIO attached to the website. So that becomes the second and third components of this ecosystem that I was talking about. Super
Mhm.
important because you have this great looking website, but now you're being found both in Google and in AI. But then it gets
Mhm.
And then
even more interesting because a major component that goes into being found is how many 5-star reviews you have. And we determined that both Google as well as AI go and look in real time to say that's one of the criterias. Well, how many reviews do they have? And they look at either the Google search results or they look at things like Yelp. So with Google, obviously the Google search results are the most important, but AI also looks at Google as well. It very quickly goes, looks, determines how many 5-star reviews you have. It looks at Yelp. It also looks at a couple of other locations, comes back and says, okay, well, there's third party validation of this particular
Mhm.
site. And then the last component that's really significant is what kind of content do you have on your website. So, Dr. Joe, you were talking about how it started saying, hey, if you need a physical therapist, why don't you go look for somebody else?
right,
I could
right.
probably tell you in that AI search result, just because you said that, if I went and looked at your website, you don't have enough specific content on your website that talks about physical therapy, right? It's just not there in a prominent spot that says, here are the 5 things I do. And that's one of the most important ones. It might be there, it might be, scattered in and out of different articles that you have, but it's not
Mhm.
listed as one of the primary things that you actually offer to your patients. So that would be a recommendation to you would be to take a look at that and add additional custom content, not not content that you just go and grab someplace or generic content about physical therapy, but stuff that's actually written by yourself. And you can start off with AI. It's always fine to use AI to get kind of a starter, but it should be customized, right? Based on your thoughts, your philosophies, and what happens in your practice. And then post that on your website because the AI, what's interesting again about it is that it does real time inquiries onto your site and evaluates that compared to other people in your area. So that starts to grow out the ecosystem that we were talking about. And then one of the major components of the ecosystem is obviously using third party advertising services to get found. What are those? Well, the big ones are Google Ads, right? You've all heard of that, pay per click advertising. That's important, right? You can still buy your way onto the first page of a Google search in a competitive marketplace. Right now, you can't do that on AI. You can't buy your way onto the first page, but I can tell you it's coming, right? They're going to monetize these AI search engines just the way Google does. Well, you'll be able to buy, an advertisement or something on these pages within the next 6 months. I can assure you it'll be there. I've already seen every now and then, maybe I think it was Gemini or Grok or one of them actually put up a little ad section that lasted for maybe a couple of weeks and then they took it down. It was an experiment to see what it would actually look like if they actually had advertising on their site. So that's coming too, and that's going to be definitely an area that you may want to think about investing in is AI advertising as well as Google advertising. Another one that works well is something called Facebook advertising. It's a little bit cheaper than Google. And what you do with Facebook advertising is you target a geo fenced area around your practice, typically 20, 30 miles, depending on how dense the population is. And what you basically say is, I want to look for anybody who's over the age of 18, under the age of, 70, who's got this economic profile. And you can actually take your existing patients and take them as a cohort and put those up into Facebook and say, find me more people just like these. And it'll look at their Facebook profiles, find other people that match them, and then actually go ahead and drive your ads to those particular Facebook users. So that's a great thing to add to your repertoire of saying, hey, how am I going to advertise? How do I grow my practice? In the old days, it used to be what door hangers and flyers you put on a car and things like that, right? That doesn't really work anymore. Direct mail, yeah, occasionally that can work. I open up direct mail every now and then, some of these coupon packs. But the best way to do it though is still Facebook, Google, and eventually it'll be the AI advertising as well when that comes out. So collectively, when you pull all this stuff together, what have you built? You built a web presence ecosystem. All the different parts, the water, light, soil, bacteria, bugs, all the rest of that stuff, all working together in nature. Now this is all working to help drive, find new patients and bring them to your practice. And you've got to have all the parts. You got to hit on all 8 cylinders in order for it to really work for you and to grow your practice.
So how does Online Chiro make it easy for me if I'm like searching for websites? Because honestly, I've gotten into some that I like wanted to bail out 2 weeks
Yeah.
into it. And I mean, is this something that is going to cause a lot of time uh, from me rather than going around knocking on doors? Or how does it get up and running? What's the time frame if I need a new
Yeah,
website?
so the typical time frame of bringing up a full web presence ecosystem is usually about 30 days. And that's from when you actually would sign a contract with us to when you would see the website come live. But that is just, again, the tip of the iceberg. If you're not managing your web presence, you're making a huge mistake. You have to actively be managing it pretty much every week. Something either adding a new article to your website, looking at your pay per click advertising strategy, adjusting your Facebook ad campaign to make sure that it's relevant. And you got to make sure that if you're spending money on advertising, you're getting back something called an ROI, return on investment. And if you're not doing that, you need to adjust your advertising campaign because you're just pissing away money, is what you're doing. So it is an active thing that we do with a
Mhm.
website. It's not like painting a house where you paint a house and you walk away and you don't have to paint it again for 10 years. This is more like mowing the grass, right? Where you mow it, it looks good, but then about 10 days later, it's like, oh, I got to mow it again because the web presence ecosystem is something that's constantly evolving. And guess what your competition is doing? They're mowing their grass, right? And so you need to make sure that, so to speak, keeping up with the Joneses. Even little things like, or I shouldn't even say little things, big things like AI. How many of the competitors haven't even thought about AI optimization on their website? So what that would give the early movers, and this is the hundreds of clients that have already signed up with us, a huge competitive advantage to say, I'm doing this today, and I want to make sure my website as AI evolves in the future stays optimized because it's gonna, as you guys can tell, it's dramatically changing. It changes every 2 to 3 weeks where they launch a new what's called large language model, new LLM. And they call it versions, right? Version 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of Gemini. Well, those are just changes to the large language model. And when it happens, you have to make sure you understand what those changes were and very rapidly adjust your website accordingly. And we stay on top of that for all the practices. We'll stay on top of your advertising for you. We'll monitor your ROI. Why? Because you're busy running your practice and servicing the needs of your patients. That right there is a full time job. So we'll take care of your web presence ecosystem. You take care of running your practice, and together we'll work to hopefully make your practice bigger and more successful.
Well, that's
Tom,
the
that
key,
sounds
right?
amazing. I think Dr. Joe, I was just jumping in there to say, as far as what is the cost on this, because it sounds too good to be true. Because when you're saying it, I'm sitting here thinking like all the time, and I know that the chiropractors have their time dedicated with the patients mostly. So, how much is this package as far as, to build a new website can be tens of thousands of dollars just once. And then usually they break it down and destroy it and rewrite all the code on the internet. So,
Uh,
which we've lived through at least a couple of different times in our own lifetime.
yeah.
So, how is that with you guys on the economics per chiropractor? Obviously, I'm sure you've got different scales, but just to have our listeners to know, where's the starting point and what's the maximum kind of thing, so they would kind of know how they would start off.
Yeah, so the entry point is again that as far as the ecosystem is concerned, if you want one little tiny dot of the ecosystem, just the bugs, right? That's $69. That would be for a basic website. Now, if
Mhm,
you're in an area that there's no other chiropractor around you for 400 miles and you're in a little town, you're the only person there, you might be okay with just that website because there is
mhm,
no other game in town. But that's not
mhm,
typically what it's like when you get into medium or high density population areas. If you do
mhm,
that, you need to have the SEO, the AIO. You need to be adding custom content to your website. And probably if you're a new practice, you're going to need to have some level of advertising to get going. That's either Facebook or pay-per-click advertising. And so that starts getting up there where you're at maybe 299, 399 a month for
mhm,
basically, all in on the AIO, SEO and custom content. But then you start talking about advertising, and that's, I mean, how much money do you want to spend on advertising? That can be
mhm,
three, four, $500 a month in just Google spend
mhm,
alone. And that's not money
mhm,
that comes online Cairo. It's the money that we'll actually collect and then pass it on to Google. And that's what Google
mhm,
is charging for their advertising, or what Facebook is charging for their advertising. And a typical spend there, $300 to $400 a month. On
mhm,
the higher side, you're talking probably between $500 and $800 a month in PPC
mhm,
spend. And that's
mhm,
just paying Google so that when somebody types in chiropractor near me, you show up in that very top part of the search that says sponsored ads. And if you've never
mhm,
noticed that before, go in and type in chiropractor near me, and you'll see the top three or four say sponsored. Those are people that aren't there organically. And organic
mhm,
just means a fancy word for free because their website's so good, Google wants to show them. But the ones that are sponsored are actually buying their way onto the first page of Google. And that's
mhm,
just, how much money do you want to spend to be there? And but also, keep in mind though, when you start spending this kind of money, $600-700 a month, you have to track and monitor the return on that investment. Right?
mhm.
It's like going to Vegas, right? If you're going to bet a dollar and you win $2 every time you bet a dollar, you're going to do it all day long.
That's a really
But
good
if you are
observation.
actually
The
going
sponsored
through
results you're
and
seeing at the
actually,
very top are
um,
usually from Google Ads.
Good point. Now, how do you do that? And how can I figure it out as a chiropractor using your services? Like, is there some kind of report that you do or that we can access? Or
That's exactly right. So what we do is we actually have reports within a doctor portal. And the doctor portal is something, it's a location of your websites behind the scenes where you can actually go in, take a look at all the information that's happening on your website. What's the traffic look like on a daily basis, right? What's it look like over a period of time? What's it look like for certain keywords, like the particular services that you offer? And how well are you ranking compared to your competition? Have you gotten any reviews that have come in, whether they're on Google, Yelp, or on other third party sites? And have you actually responded to those reviews, either good or bad? It's super important that you respond to both, right? Even if it's just a short, thank you, Mary, we love you too,
Mhm,
right? And always be careful though when you do a response. Never give HIPAA information, ever. Don't ever say, thank you, Mary, for coming in and having your back adjusted. You can't say that. Thank
that
you.
MRI was the worst I've
Fantastic.
ever seen. I can't believe we got you better. Something
You
like that. No.
cannot say that. That's absolutely right. And if it's a bad response, it's like, hey, give us a call. We'll make it right. So let people
mhm,
know, even if they're not willing to take it down, and a lot of them are, you'd be surprised. Just make sure that other people that are reading those responses say, Dr. Joe responded and said, I'm sorry you had to wait in the waiting room so long, but come in, call, we'll make this right. And people read those and they're like, okay. And there's not a single company out there in the world that doesn't have a bad review. I don't care if you're Apple, Tesla, Online Chiro, Dr. Joe, right? Somewhere, somehow, there's been somebody who's not happy because something didn't happen exactly the way they wanted it to. The
Or
key
I don't
is
know. If I get a bad one, I think is they didn't even come. Half the time I don't recognize. I got a guy from. It says his name is Anaconda. I'm like, I do not have a patient named
so
Anaconda. Okay,
so Dr.
like
Joe, with our service, right? And it's called reputation management. What we would do in your particular case there is we would actually fight that review and say, this is not even a patient. And there
right,
are avenues where people will, Google will actually take down
yeah,
these reviews if you can show that, hey, it says Mickey Mouse. That's not
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
real person, even though they're giving you a 1-star review. And
yeah.
we can get those kind of reviews taken down. Um, the ones that are legitimate, though, those are ones you need to work with the person who actually posted them. You can't force Google to take those down, but you can actually work with the person to
Hmm.
maybe make things right and get them to say, hey, if nothing else, Dr. Joe did get back to me. I'm still leaving my 1-star review, but he did get back to me and we straightened out this mess. And
That's great
let's all
advice.
move on.
But no, those 1-star reviews are incredibly damaging, especially when they're
Terrible.
fabricated and it's from, you know what I mean? It's like
Yes,
it feels like extortion at a point. So it's like I
kind of
understand you want to
does.
be able to share your story, but it's like, you know, I'm sure I'm
Right.
not the only chiropractor who's experienced
You're
this,
not.
right? I've
You're
developed a
not.
hobby of going through like Googling companies and reading their 1-star reviews and just how they're dealing with it. You know, it's like I got that
Every
OCD going on,
company,
Tom.
every company has them. The key there is to, if you do have a bad review and it shows up towards the top of the list, bury it with 5-star reviews is my advice. And how do you do that? Well, there's a very simple way to get a lot of 5-star reviews. And this is something you can kind of free advice to all the chiropractors out there. Get a little card, just a card, an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And on that card, put the QR code. If you guys don't know what that is, look it up. QR code. It's what you go to a restaurant and on the menu, you can scan it with your cell phone and it shows up the menu. We all know what those are. We've all seen them around.
Perfect.
Yep. Put a QR code on this 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, laminate it, and put it at the front desk. And then whoever it is that's checking out your patients, getting their copay or signing them out, finishing up everything, if they're happy and they're laughing and everything looks good, say, would you mind doing me a favor? Hold up that piece of paper, tell them to take their cell phone and point it at it, right, with the camera on. It's then going to take them to where they can leave you a 5-star review. Basically, they hit 5 stars. They can type in love Dr. Joe, enter, and they're done. Now, here's how you're going to get this to happen every single time. Whoever that person is at your front desk, I'll call her the front desk girl, right? Tell her that for the next month, you're going to give her $5 for every 5-star review that she can get in the next 30 days. And I can assure you, Dr. Joe, every patient that walks out who's got a big smile on their face, she's going to hold up that QR code and say, would you mind doing this for me? Taking us
Tom,
and
I
leaving
love
us a
your
5-star
style,
review,
man. I love your style. It's a money motivated culture, right?
right?
So that's I
Or
never thought of that.
at the end of the month have a competition between two front desk girls, right? If there's two of them up there, whoever gets the most 5-star reviews also gets a day off with pay, right? Turn it
That
in,
is awesome.
gamify the process of collecting 5-star reviews. Now, the reason that it's not automated is because if the person walks up to the front desk and is grumbling and saying, I had to wait an hour to get to Dr. Joe, well, guess what they don't do, right? They don't show that little card, right? And they apologize, but they don't hold up and say, would you mind leaving me a 1-star review? And that way
Mhm,
you're using the human person at the front when they're checking them out to be that determining
mhm,
factor as to whether or not you're going to hand that up and let them take a picture of that and leave you guys a 5-star review. And I've seen this happen over and over again where, practices with no reviews within a matter of a month have 20 or 30 5-star reviews just because they gamified it and they handed out a little bit of money, for each one that the front desk girl actually collects. And keep in
Absolutely.
mind that $5 for a 5-star review in Google, oh my God, they're worth their weight in gold as far as
mhm,
ranking better in a Google
mhm,
search or an AI search to draw in new patients. Because remember, as I said at the beginning, you have the best looking website in the world. If you're on page 13, you might as well not even have a website. I mean, when's the last time you guys went to page 13 to find a Chinese restaurant? How about
mhm,
page 7 of a Google search?
mhm,
Page
mhm.
5? How about page 3 of a Google search for a Chinese restaurant?
No,
Maybe page 2,
you
right?
get
Mhm.
places that places,
That's right.
right
So
away.
Tom,
That
you've got
you
me
don't get in one
sold on
place.
this. I'm thinking we need to
I'm
actually turn
hungry
this into
too,
a
by the
feature
way.
story. What's that?
I'm gonna have some Chinese right now. I think. I don't
so
know.
Chinese sounds good. It's actually noon here in Chicago too. I'm kind of hungry. But
Mhm. Well, and
anyway,
I
these
wanted to jump in because Tom, quite frankly, we as publishers in the chiropractic space, every time what we see is the people who are the most active are usually the negative Nellies. The ones who sit down and write, we're always like, we all get numb when things are going great. But when something goes bad, then everybody pulls out their computer, their pen and paper, and writes a complaint. And in the chiropractic space, a lot of times we've even seen people get paid to actually trash chiropractic as a profession. The paid shills. It's actually a profession now. So for you to provide this great solution is something that I really want to make sure we actually get this broadcast out there in writing as well as promoting this, because that's right there's something that, one, I'm glad Dr. Joe, you as a practicing chiropractor, even brought it up, because most people might not even mention it, because they take it personally. But we've learned, and Dr. Joe's been the first one to always teach me as well, there's not everybody out there is honest. Not all of them are really that great intentioned, and sometimes you shouldn't give them a platform.
Yeah. I
So
don't know.
it's
Anaconda
nice.
was probably well intentioned, Jacqueline, but I mean,
yeah.
no, it
And,
sometimes feels like there's a deliberate,
yeah.
angle there, but we
And the
don't have to do
advice I'm
that.
giving, with this holding up this QR code is not anything that's saying that we're trying to cheat the system. No,
Right,
we're talking to legitimate patients who are checking out. What we're doing is we're making it easy for them
right,
to make to leave behind information about their experience that just happened,
right,
and in a way that is very easy for them. The world is, I call it the Amazon world anymore, where you order something at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, by 5, it's on your doorstep, right? It
mhm.
just kind of just it blows me away every time that something like that happens, but it does, and
It's
that's what the
crazy.
world is like now. People want stuff super easy, and this
Mhm.
is just a way of easy way, cheap way of getting 5-star reviews that are legit, right?
That are
Not
honest.
made
That's
up,
the whole point, Tom. You're
honest.
not trying to do anything wrong. You're just
Nothing
highlighting
wrong
the
with it.
good.
Just making it easy for them to do that, and making it a gamify it, so the people in the front office there, when they're checking them out, so they remember to do it.
Tom, there's a lot of wisdom in that gamification that you're explaining. Now, for a chiropractor who's had their website for 10 years and just kind of auto repeat and figuring out, like, what do I do now? Is there, how hard is it to transition to you guys? Is there some way that you offer, like, for example, email newsletters? Or, I mean, sometimes I try to write these newsletters and it takes me an entire weekend. What kind
Yeah.
of things can you help them get out there with a good message that helps fill their clinic?
Yeah. So we can migrate over anybody's website that they have today. So if they haven't touched their website in 10 years, that's and they're trying to grow their practice. This is one thing if they're thinking about retiring and they're just letting kind of it, fade away. But even then, it's still not good for the patients. Maybe they don't have a place to make it easy for them to schedule an appointment. They don't have information on the website. They don't have AI chat bots that are on there, which we now have, where you can actually ask basically you're asking a computer system, tell me all the information that's contained on the website. And we call her Annie. And Annie is just absolutely amazing. We set her up, she goes in, she learns everything about your practice that's on the website, and condenses it down into a little chat box. So instead of having to search pages and pages and pages of your website to say, do you guys take United Healthcare insurance? You ask Annie and she comes back and says either yes or no, and then gives you the phone number and a link where you can click to leave, to make an appointment. So think of it as your website within a little chat window. And also you can feed Annie other information too that's not even on your website. She'll even speak in different languages if you want. You can chat with
Mhm.
her in Spanish and she'll answer back in Spanish as well too. So these are things that you can add to your website if you haven't touched it in 10 years. You know, it's 2026, right? Let's bring your website at least current, and we can do that very easily within about 30 days. And then you pick and choose what kind of, how much money do you want to spend? What's your budget for your web presence ecosystem? What does it look like?
Tom, I'm going to tell you something. I wanted to mention, because the words patient acquisition, like all these things about budgets, I'm going to tell you their answer. Their answer is, I don't want to spend anything or as little as possible. But as far, what is the advice for patient acquisition? The most effective, tips for a website, all these other things are great, but really all they want is new patients, right? They used to think it was a business card, right? Your website was just supposed to be a business card. So
Mhm. You go
it's
around
not,
knocking
Yeah.
on doors nowadays, they might, look at you weird. So it's like,
Yeah.
you can't.
Well,
It's not the same.
the cheapest way to get new patients, and again, I'm gonna give you guys good advice. The cheapest way is to go to your existing base of customers,
Mhm.
send them all an email, and basically say, "Hey, I'm looking to grow the practice. Is there anybody else that you know, a family member or friend, who's complained? Oh, my back is killing me. Oh, my shoulder hurts. Right?
Mhm.
And if so, give them my information, and I will
Mhm.
in return give you the next session 50% off, and I'll give them their first session at 50% off, right?
Oh.
Just so they can come in and get to know who I am. And
Mhm.
here's an easy way that you can go ahead and do that. Something maybe on a website where they can fill out a form and say, "Hey, this is John Smith.
Mhm.
I'm recommending my cousin Billy to come in." Um, and then he backs off from there. And if Billy comes in, you match up Billy to the person, right? That gave the referral, and you give them both some discounts. That's the easiest and cheapest way
Mhm.
to try to grow your practice, is what I call referrals. But then if that's not working, boy, it's not door hangers, it is not flyers underneath windshields, windshield wipers in the Vaughn's parking lot, the grocery store parking lot. It is absolutely online. It is Google is still the 800-pound gorilla, but there are a few other junior gorillas that are starting to grow, like Gemini, which is also a part of Google, but still it's separate, right? It's a separate animal. And then you've got things like Claude and Grok, and there'll be more that are going to be coming. And
Mhm.
these are the ones that you need to pay attention to, because there's a lot of searches that are heading over to these other AI search engines, these LLMs, large language models.
Tom, I'm
Mhm.
happy to know that you're paying attention to it because I'm like skeptical, like Jacqueline says. I don't trust any
Mhm.
of them. So if
Yeah.
Well,
you're interfacing with them, I feel much more comfortable because I'm getting in
mhm.
arguments with Grok.
Tom's established that he trusts the Google, and Dr. Joe is saying he questions it all.
No, I don't even use Gemini, but like, anyways, they used to say, oh, no evil stuff, but I don't know.
It's yeah, I mean, it's technology is always a double-edged sword, right? It can be used for good and evil, and AI is going to be exactly the same. There's not going to be anything different about it.
Uh-huh. Well, and this is a big question then too, because I was gonna say with our own experience, we mail physical copies still to 40,000 chiropractors every month. And of course, nobody would deny the power of digital. I mean, like you said, you want something, you're gonna either Google it, ask Siri, or ask now Chat GPT. So then the question is how to work with both of them, because I think that's one of the big concerns too, as a Ben, is how much you trust Google, how much you trust Facebook.
Which
It's
we're on
almost
Google Chrome browser right now, so everyone knows, right? So that's why he loves Gemini. I got it. I got it. And I love Gemini too. But
so, do you
All
have
hail
any
Google, right? All hail
right,
Google. Don't cut us off anymore, right? We love you, Google.
right.
No,
So, is there any
yeah,
integration you recommend where you're talking about them with their email lists, working through their websites and things like that so that they have some tangible information of people they verify are actual patients or family of patients? So they're making sure maybe that their Facebook campaigns are targeting those people first and foremost, and
yeah.
then,
Well, some of that is you feed your information, what you call your cohort list, and that's your current patients. You feed that into Facebook, and then from there, it supposedly goes out and finds people that look like these individuals, like their age, their demographics, their location, the number of children they have, their occupation, whatever information Facebook has. It tries to take the ads and send them to that matching cohort. But I mean, we're not there. We're not watching. Nobody's really watching. It's just the computer system that's doing it, and you have to kind of believe that it's doing what they say it's going to do. But then at the end of the day, that's why I say you always have to monitor advertising with your ROI, your return on investment. So how much money did I make versus how much money did I spend? And just think, you're going to Vegas. I'm going to bet $1, and I'm really hoping I win $1.25. And if you are, you should do that all day long. You don't have to win
we're going for
$100 if
10.
you bet
We're going for $10, Tom. We
and
want
$10
that
is
big
even better.
ROA.
But even Even betting a dollar and getting a buck 25, I'll stay all day in the casino doing that.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say too, and you guys are auditing, for example, because I know I've worked with some Google campaigns where they give me reports saying there was so many phone calls to a number, and then when I go to that phone number, I'm like, "Wait a sec, I don't have registered all those phone calls." Do you ever find any discrepancies like that between what Google says happened and what the phone company says happened?
Yeah, there's always discrepancies, and that's why whenever we have advertising campaigns, we set up a separate page called a landing page. The landing page, think of it as a little mini website. So we take all the advertising clicks and we drive them to this one page. And what we do then is we monitor the traffic that's hitting this one page that nobody else could find unless they were clicking on the ad. And that's how we monitor and measure the ROI. So it has a separate phone number on there that transfers over to your main phone. You don't have to do anything in your practice, but this phone number is something we can track. And so we can actually see how many calls came in, how many people went to this landing page and actually clicked make an appointment. That way, you know, this stuff is coming from advertising and not just randomly coming from some other source. And that's how you can measure then your return on investment. So you
Awesome
have to use
advice.
landing pages to do that.
If they're clicking, but they don't fill out a form, are you then capturing their IPs and then remarketing and retargeting to them?
So we could, if that's something that the practice would want. It's a little bit tougher though, even on the IP addresses with the remarketing. Got to make sure you have all your terms and conditions right.
Mhm,
Track cookie tracking and all the rest of that stuff, the privacy laws. But
mhm,
theoretically, it is very possible. It happens to you guys all the time. You'll go and you'll click on something like I want to look at a brand new Toomey backpack, and all of a sudden, every ad you see for the next 3 weeks has Toomey backpacks all over it.
mhm,
And that's what remarketing is. It's the fact that you hit
mhm,
a website, you went to there, you visited, you looked at their products, and now all of a sudden you keep seeing advertising from that particular manufacturer showing up. It just follows you wherever you go for a period of
mhm,
time, and that is something that you can absolutely do with advertising.
mhm.
Outstanding, outstanding recommendations, all of them. Jacqueline, we're kind of getting along in this.
Yep, I know, I was just checking, there's one last question I was gonna ask, and it was kinda like how to meet the patients where they're searching for care. Any top tips on that?
Yeah, it still boils down to Google. That's where the most of the searches are. And then transitioning now into AI, that's where you want to meet new patients because whenever they want day or night, that's when you need to be able to be relevant for that person searching for chiropractor near me. And then now to make your website to make what I'll call a artificial answering person, right? An AI assistant, information assistant, those are now available. And we actually are going to be starting to market those here in the next month, where you can literally hit a website and a box will open up and it'll say in text, if you're going with a browser, "Hi, I'm Annie. How can I help you?" And you can say, "Annie, does Dr. Joe offer this particular service?" And she will read your website and give the most accurate information. It'll blow you away. You'll think you're talking to a person. And then you'll say, "Oh, and by the way, Annie, can you answer in Spanish? I feel more comfortable talking in Spanish." And she'll come back and say, habla español. I don't speak Spanish, but whatever it would be, saying, yeah, I can definitely answer in Spanish, and she'll start communicating with the person in a completely different language. Every piece of information on your website, plus anything else that you feed her, and then you can click a button that says, "Yes, I'd like to schedule an appointment." It'll open up then on your mobile device or on your tablet, and here's Dr. Joe's calendar, and they can literally schedule an appointment. And you guys are sound asleep. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and an appointment's being actually made. And these are called AI assistants. They're information assistants and they're absolutely amazing. This is using AI for the good, right? Where it's able to really make somebody's life a lot easier. So they don't have to go through your entire website to find out the answer. They can just simply type it in and it gives them that particular piece of information.
Super, well, thank you so much, Tom, appreciate it. Dr. Joe, I know that, and I think we've covered all the grounds. If you wanted to wrap things up, and Tom, I just wanted to say we're glad to have an insider on the AI. So we're going to be reaching out to you more and more. We're going to get some stuff in print this year, 2026. You're on the
Yep.
forefront.
Tom Daniel is our insider correspondent in the pages of the American Chiropractor. Tom, did you have any final words?
No, just if anybody's interested in taking a look at our services, just go to onlinechiro.com and set up an appointment with one of our specialists, and they'll walk you through it. No obligation. Let's just chat and see whether or not we're a good fit for your practice.
That wraps up today's TAC Tic Talk with Tom Daniel, General Manager of Online Chiro. Thank you, Tom, for sharing your practical insights on building a powerful web presence ecosystem. Um, the world of SEO and AI, you need a guy like Tom to help guide that. He's going to help you grow effectively, productively, affordably. Recommend checking out Online Chiro, and you can call it 888-932-5560. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow our online platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, YouTube, everywhere you listen to the podcasts. Thank you for all you do. Be sure to like our podcast online, and see you next time.